Welcome back to Hardball. Barack Obama's second term is underway, of course, and that means one thing. It's legacy building time. But pushing through a Democratic agenda becomes much easier when the party controls both the House and Senate, of course. It's a tough challenge for 2014 when you look at the map. Mark Begich in Alaska, Mark Pryor in Arkansas, Mary Landrieu down in Louisiana, Max Baucus out in Montana, Kay Hagan down in North Carolina, and South Dakota's Tim Johnson are all looking at potentially very tough races in states that Mitt Romney won, as will the Democrat who runs for Jay Rockefeller's seat in West Virginia. Nor is it a cakewalk in a few blue states either. For example, in Iowa and Minnesota, we have Democrats running for the Senate. Conservatives see a big opportunity. They took a look at this front page story, as we did, in the Washington Times today. Quote, Obama agenda is risky for red state Democrats. Well, Guy Cecil's good news for Democrats. He's the executive director of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. He pulled a rabbit, rather a donkey, out of his hat last year when the Democrats gained seats, actually gained seats in the year that looked like a sure for Democrats. Well, that's his job, to pull up another miracle and hang on to the Senate. And Maggie Haberman, a great reporter, she's at Politico. She's senior political reporter. I think this is important because I think although it's already a year off, or a year and a half off, people want to know how Obama's going to make it. Is he going to put points on the board, immigration reform, something on gun safety? So he likes to talk about himself being a center-left version, I think, of a Ronald Reagan, meaning he wants to get on the history books. And the question is, can he do it with a Republican House? Probably not, so he's hoping to switch it. Let's talk about the Senate, however. A lot of people in the Democratic Party are lucky to be in the Senate because they don't match up with the way those states vote in presidential elections. Is this a danger?
Well, it's always a danger. The question is, how do you deal with it? And I think we've got
How do you beat the spread?
Well, look, we got a roadmap on what happened in 2012. We don't have to just guess about what's going to happen. There was no one saying, well, we passed the Affordable Care Act. That's an easy vote, so now we can move on to something else. Our incumbents last cycle voted for tough things, time after time after time, and they won. We had 5 senators win in states that the president lost. Heidi Heitkamp won in North Dakota. The president lost by 21 points. The way you do it is you represent the people of your state. People in North Dakota are the same as anywhere else. They don't want a Xerox machine as their senator that looks at where the president votes or where the president supports and simply does the same thing. They want someone that represents their state. And the thing we have to learn is the lesson that the Republicans are trying to teach us. The fastest way to be a minority party is to have a long list of things that everyone has to check off in order to be a member of the party. If we're going to win in Manhattan, and we're going to win in Minot, we have to be able to actually talk to both sets of people at the same time. And we got to have people that represent your states, and we have to be a party that's willing to allow people to vote their conscience.
I'm looking at a couple of the senators who are women. Kay Hagan down in North Carolina, Maggie, and of course Mary Landrieu, who seems to be, she escapes the vengeance of the right every 6 years. She manages to get reelected down there by being careful, by being very respectful of the local attitudes about politics, especially issues like guns, of course, in Louisiana, and immigration, of course, down there. If you're the Democratic leader, do you want to advise people to vote with the majority and help them pass bills, or save themselves?
I think you're going to see a little bit of both. Not to step on Guy's territory here, but I think that you will see some public boosterism, and I think you will see people privately getting a pass. I think you've seen it in response to immigration in the last couple of days with some of the senators you've discussed a minute ago who are not offering up huge stands in support of getting something done immediately. They're taking more of a wait-and-see attitude. I think you're going to see a lot of that. Where I think you're going to see it more, however, is on guns as opposed to on immigration. I think that is going to be a much tougher sell.
Well, we were talking about it before we went on, and my concern watching politics, not being in it, is the gun people, the Second Amendment people who are really ferocious on that issue, and fairly so. That's their position. It's democracy. They don't forget. So Michael Bloomberg can go into a state, and he could potentially, he's not going to do it, drop $5 or $10 million for somebody. He's doing a couple million for a candidate for Congress in that Jesse Jackson Jr. seat in the South Side in Chicago. But he's going to leave. He's going to go on to other issues, wind energy or something he's interested in. And that person's still there trying to get reelected.
That's right. Look, the fact of the matter is we're not going to get 100% of all Democratic votes for every piece of gun control legislation that goes through the Senate. We are going to get a large...
If you were Harry Reid and you work with him, would you encourage him to expose people like Mark Pryor down in Arkansas and Max Baucus out in Montana? Would you ask them to vote on an assault weapons ban?
I think Harry Reid will give them the same advice that I give them in private, which is when you agree with the president, you should say so, and when you disagree with the president,
and don't buckle the pressure from the White House.
We've seen Mark Pryor has already come out in opposition to the assault weapons ban. I suspect you'll see a couple of others. But I would just juxtapose that against what's happening on the other side. The reason we're starting in the Senate first is because John Boehner and the leaders on the House side can't get anything done. They can't get a majority of their own party to support the Speaker's own.
But you realize how their strategy could work? You in the Senate will be the first cut. You're like the first guys going over the top in World War I, blowing the whistles, right? Cutting through the concertina wire. You guys could get mowed down. People like, I'm thinking about Pryor, Begich, Landrieu, Hagan, Tim Johnson. They all have to vote up or down.
Yeah,
so then what happens is the House, which is run by Republicans, they don't have to take on issues like that because they've already been beaten.
Here's the difference.
Therefore, they don't lose
The
votes.
Republican Party is running people like Murdoch and Todd Aiken and Christine O'Donnell.
If you're lucky again.
And they are eschewing everybody else. When Dick Lugar and Mike Castle are conservative enough, when they don't pass the litmus test, what does the Republican Party do? They throw them out. We embrace folks from Louisiana and Arkansas, and they're not going to vote with us all the time. And we just have to accept that fact. But the fact is,
Maggie, let me ask you, looking at this objectively, what happens when when they don't have these lucky jokers in the deck, like Aiken and Murdoch? They were really gifts to these people.
They were, yeah, they were. But
what happens when they don't show up in 214 because people like Rove and others have culled the herd?
Look, I think there's no question that Democrats got lucky last year. Republicans had a pretty poor crop of candidates. You had some candidates, Senate candidates, Republicans who lost in states Mitt Romney won. So you can't only blame Mitt Romney. However, I also think you have to give Guy and his team credit in terms of recruitment. It's not just, the other side. But I think that there's no question 2014 is probably going to be a much tougher year for Democrats than last one was. I think a lot of things came, were aligned well. Some were proactive by the Democrats, some were not, but I think that it's going to be different, and it's playing out on a different legislative climate.
Total congressional question. Maggie, you start. Does the president need to win the House next time and hold the Senate to be a president of history, to get the kinds of bills passed that put you up there with the top presidents?
No, but it would help, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to win the House.
Well, I certainly think it's going to be difficult for those things to happen, but I would agree with Maggie.
You can hold the Senate, though, can't you?
We intend to hold the Senate. No one thought we could hold it last cycle. Not only did we hold it, we picked up seats. And it wasn't just because we had the Murdochs. No one was saying Tommy Thompson was extreme or Dennis Rehberg was extreme. We won because we recruited candidates that best fit their state.
You know what I have to say, what I care about? You know what I respect in politics? People like the people on this list.
Me too.
Because anybody can come from a big city and vote 100% ADA and be guaranteed a seat for life. But when you're out there on the frontier, and you're out there as a moderate Democrat, and you're trying to get elected among moderate Democrats in your state, maybe you've got 50% of the state's moderate Democrat, you've got to prove yourself every 6 years. You've got to prove yourself to the people out there.
That's right.
And that's really gutsy. That's great. Great stuff. Anyway, good luck. By the way, you've got great ink today.
Oh, thank you.
Don't think it's going to stay that way. It never stays that way. Anyway, Guy Cecil, the guy who brought the Senate. I think it's like baseball managers. They have one good World Series season. That's all
I'll take it. I'll take
anyway,
one.
Thank you very much, Guy Cecil. And as always, good to have you back, Maggie. Miss you.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, things you don't want to hear from